The world's best physios don't just treat, they coach. Here at the Physio Coach Podcast, we invite the best physios, coaches, and health experts to inspire you on your journey to becoming a physio coach. This podcast is sponsored by Better, provider of in-person physio and personal training services in central London. We help people feel better, then live better. We believe that better never ends. This podcast exists to inspire your journey to better. So most people learn by failure, but smart people learn through other people's failures. So today we're going to talk about Alex's journey. Alex Morrell sitting in front of me today. Business owner these days, primarily. Physiotherapist by trade. And it's a really interesting journey through sports physio, MSK physio, into entrepreneurial world of owning his business. And I've just been reading a book on the way in, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And that quote really stuck with me. Reminded me about why I try to learn myself and why I try and expand my knowledge through other people's stories in this podcast, through books. Because I don't want to keep learning by failure, because I think that is the slow way to learn. And to hear other people's versions of it, I think it's really helpful for not just me, but the audience out there as well. So, welcome. Tell us about your journey into physio, first of all.
Thanks for having me. It's a book I read a long time ago. I don't remember that particular quote, but it holds a lot of truth for me as well. Like, I've always heavily invested in my education in all facets, whether that's professionally as a physio, professionally as a business owner, and I've invested heavily into mentorships and CPD, and then even just things like this. There's an opportunity to be a sponge and like you say, learn from other people's failures, which is massively valuable. So I think I do like that quote as well. Yeah. In terms of my story, how far back do you want me to go? Do you want me to go right back to the failures?
Do you know the bit I love? It's the bit where someone first realises the physio might be for them. Because there's normally something that's inspired them, triggered them, or maybe failures actually. Because I know a few people, it's I wanted to be. In fact, we spoke with Matt Todman, previous owner of Six Physio. He wanted to be a doctor,
right? Okay.
And he said, "I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor." Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll go into a physio, and then I'll then be a doctor after that. So that was his failure, and look at him now. Like he's had a really successful career.
Yeah. So my interest in physio came from playing cricket as a teenager. I was relatively good, played like a county level and some North of England regional type things, and I suffered a back injury. Had no idea what was going on, and went round the houses trying to fix it. Now looking back, the things that I was trying were relatively poor, but you don't know what you don't know. And I was trying different massage, and I remember seeing what I said was the physio. I don't know whether they were a physio at the fire service in my local town where I was brought up. And I just could never fix it, and started just going down different rabbit holes. Because for me at that time, and like I played cricket pretty much every day, multiple times a day at some points, and there's no wonder I ended up with a stress fracture and a couple of disc issues off the back of that as a young man maturing into a large body. I'm 6'5", and
you're taller than I.
Everyone says it.
Actually,
Everybody says it. I got told yesterday I've got a young face, and that's the reason it's a surprise I'm so tall. Yeah. But I just couldn't get past it. But at that time, cricket was me. I was Alex, who was good at cricket, and it was my identity, and I struggled with not being able to do that, and just went down different rabbit holes of trying to fix the problem. And I guess fell in love with trying to fix the problem. I do like fixing problems in general. I loved maths and things like that at school, but then found a real interest in the human body, and both from a training perspective. At the time I wanted to look good, and girls were coming into life and things like that, but then also from a sports performance, I wanted to be the best cricketer that I could be, and the start of that would have been trying to fix my back, and managed to do that. Looking back now, I don't really remember what helped. I just went and trained in a different way to like a traditional bodybuilding way, looked at different athletic development type models, and just started to get stronger and fitter, and my back sorted itself out. Never really reached any particular heights from a cricket perspective after that. I suffered with something called the yips. It might be something you're familiar with.
Yeah, golf. It's very, very golf, isn't it?
Yeah, fine motor skills, and I did my dissertation and my master's on it, and I still don't really understand why it happens and what it is, but dartitis is another one. The guy who played against Luke Littler in the final, he had it and overcame it successfully. So,
Only Earls, I think he was the famous.
I think so, yeah.
4-putted on
I
the
did
Masters, maybe?
more than a 4 putt. I think the biggest over I ever bowled was about 23 balls, and I just in the end just stood there trying to get through it. But and then it just led me down a path, and I wanted to become a physio and study that at university. Sadly, when I went into sixth form, I went to an all-boys school, did really well GCSE, probably without trying on reflection, or relatively intelligent and did very well. And then there's obviously that step up in level of education into sixth form, but the other thing was it was a mixed sex sixth form. So my attention was maybe placed elsewhere, as well as trying to play sport, and I got a car, and
The world opens up.
it does,
right?
yeah.
And I'm saying this because it happened to me as well.
Yeah. and I, through sixth form, I actually retook every single module. And I finished with a CCD. Wasn't good enough to get into to do physiotherapy at any university, and I did sports science with injury management. Now, injury management was a loose term. It was one module. It was a sports science degree, heavily weighted towards strength and conditioning as well. And it was the best thing that happened to me. Quite honestly, still continued to fail in the first year. Again, it's that transition of life and a lot more independence, not living at home, females in your life and things like that, and retook every module in the first year, and then the penny dropped, and I just started to try, quite honestly. And I look back and reflect on it now, and I wonder, like, is there something that drives me to do more and to do better because of those failures? Probably. Like unfulfilled potential, maybe from a sporting perspective or an education perspective, but they've all allowed me to get to where I've got to now. And in that second year, I started getting roles within professional sport from an apprenticeship type perspective, a work experience perspective. I was travelling all around the north of England, from north to east to west and into the Midlands, just to pick up experience and build relationships, maybe, really, because I knew I wanted to go into professional sport in some capacity. But I also just loved being in that environment and learning and seeing what people were doing. And then I was successful in getting onto a master's, and nearly got kicked out of that because of attendance, because all I was bothered about was MSK. And at this point, I had a part-time job in professional sport. So I was just going there, wanting to do MSK. Some interest in neurology, because there is that crossover. Respiratory, I couldn't have cared less about. Yeah. It's a wrong thing to say now, but it's the honest thing.
My neurology viva.
Yeah.
So basically, I was the same.
Yeah.
I was really interested in learning about MSK. And we had a viva where you're going to get tested on one of the three.
Yeah.
I was obviously fine on MSK, and I just left it too late. So, right, I can revise for one of these two. Which one shall I pick? I picked respiratory, and neuro came up, so I failed it.
And it, like, again, I don't want to bash the education, but even the MSK was poor. Yeah. And I was, at the time, I was doing lots of my own personal CPD outside of the opportunities that I had. I was doing lots of CPD courses and going on online webinars and things like that, and I just loved it. Like I was testing things on my friends. There was a group of us. There was a couple of lads in the year ahead of me, and I'd gone through. They'd done the same, sports science, injury management, and then a masters in physiotherapy, and we would just test stuff. We would assess each other, and it's at the time, like, you go through like the PRI type lens, right? What happens if we do this on each other, and what, like, just open to learning, and if something works and sticks, it becomes part of the system, and if it doesn't, it's dropped, but you might come back to it in the future, and if it helps someone, it helps someone. And I just wanted to gain as much experience as possible and have as many, I hate the saying, but tools in the toolbox to help people, really, and achieve the goals.
There's if we go back to that saying that we opened the episode with, there's almost you almost have to learn naively through your own experiences first about failure. I don't think anyone is going to be learning from other people's experiences as a teenager, as a young adult. You have to learn through that failure to begin with, to then realise that you need to be more forward thinking and look around and learn from others. So I can hear that from you, and I'm feeling it as my experience as well, going through that slow learning journey of dropping the ball a bit with my energy on learning in my A levels, going to university, getting distracted. Mine was actually, I was probably 1 year ahead of you. I was quite into it first year actually at uni. There was something that triggered it in me in that first year. But then when I went into the masters, the physio masters, I was coasting because I'd done well in my degree. I was then like, I've got this. And there was a step up, right? The masters is a
massive,
academic step up.
Yeah.
So I was caught out in that first year and had to do it again, had to really dial it up again. So.
Yeah, I think you've got to feel the emotion, whatever negative emotion is attached to it, of your own personal failure, to probably do everything that within your control not to go back there. And maybe I have an unhealthy relationship with that sometimes. That I was chatting before, and like for a period before Christmas for 8 weeks, we've got our newborn that was born in August, a 2-year-old, and everyone was going to bed, but I still had work to do, and I didn't want to fall behind. I didn't want to not achieve the goals, and I was working like 9 till 1 a.m. and then up at 6 a.m. the next morning. I'm not trying to glorify that, but I felt like it was what I had to do to achieve the things that I was trying to achieve in that period of time. And
were you tired at the time?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And did you still have the energy at 12 o'clock to do it?
Well, yes, because I did it. Was it the best work that I could have done? Maybe not. Some of it was administrative tasks. It was just the day-to-day things of running multiple businesses and having a life as well. Yeah.
The reason I ask is because I've been in those phases before where there's almost a needs must energy that comes in my brain where it's like I shouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now. I should be absolutely knocked out in bed. And I'm still like, right, I have to do this. There's this like fire in my brain that's just lighting off. And there's only a finite period where I can handle that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've pushed the limits and recognized that that's not healthy for me in the end. But yeah, I'm, as I look back on some of my last 3 or 4 years, there's been periods where I've not made the best choices for periods where it needs to be done though. In my mind.
I'm going to say that when you say it's not the best choices, but
maybe it is.
Has it achieved the goal that you were looking to achieve? And
do I regret it? I'm not sure.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful things that a mentor of mine taught me was there's push and pull seasons, and as long as you are aware and have intent with the actions that you're having or that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, then if I'm in a push season, which I felt like, I knew I was then, I'm going to be tired and might have to sacrifice other things. I wasn't training as much, but the business is now in a big expansion phase off the back of the work that was done then. And I had a pull season over Christmas where for 7 to 10 days, and I just let the dust settle a little bit.
There's another thing that I consider when I'm struggling a bit. November last year was definitely one of those times where just so much happening in my life, so much going on. And I like to be a high performer in all areas of my life, but I also sometimes get caught out trying to prioritize everything in my life, which cannot happen. The idea of a priority is you can only really have one.
It's the myth of a work-life balance, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. So that was what I realized. It's like, I'm trying to prioritize everything here, and then getting annoyed that I'm dropping the ball in places. I'm going to have to pull back. Using your metaphor, I'm going to have to pull back in some of these areas. So for me, exercise pulled back for a month. So I stopped, and even when I was doing that, I still cycle into work. So I'm still getting exercise.
You still consider it around your nutrition. Yeah. You're optimizing your sleep as much as possible.
But I wasn't going for a run 3 times a week and the gym twice a week on top of that. So it was a bit of a reality check. My business coach kind of challenged me on it. It was like, so how much are you exercising then? So I told him, he was like, that's loads. Like, what? Why are you then thinking that dropping back to just cycling to work is a bad thing when you've got all these other things happening in your life? So and when you then hear it, it's like that kind of like duh moment, like you think, obviously.
It's the nature of being driven.
You can't help it.
It's that nature of being driven. It's like, I always need to do more. I need to do more. At the moment, I'm like, I want to find time I'm doing a High Rocks in March. I want to run 3 times a week, 2 strength training sessions and do a couple of jiu-jitsu sessions. And the reality is I've failed to do that every single week because I'm overreaching realistically, but it is the nature, I believe, of a driven person that you do want to optimize all aspects, but the reality is it doesn't always play out like that.
So you decided at uni, though, actually, perhaps quite wisely, that you were going to optimise for MSK.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a few people recently speaking of this, and it's not a new idea, that physio at an educational level should be split, and that there should be more of an MSK type course that people can take. I think given the complexity of each of them in their own right, it makes sense to me that they should be split, because most people would agree that they leave the course thinking, I'm not really set up to practice. Certainly, I mean, I went to MSK, so I can only speak from an MSK perspective. I definitely didn't feel set up to do it, and luckily I was in an environment where it was safe for me to be pretty rubbish, actually, and have the support around me. What do you think about that? Like the MSK being a course in its own right?
I think there's value in it. I guess it's the political side of it in terms of what is the knock-on effect to the NHS. Obviously the course is tailored for physios to go and work in the NHS, albeit there's not many jobs at the moment and things like that, so they have to cover all those things. And is it that they just see that as the minimum effective dose to make sure someone's safe, and then the genuine learning happens in the rotations? Probably yes, but there are a relatively large cohort of people like you or I that doesn't really want to do that. I haven't worked a day in the NHS. I can hold my hands up and feel guilty about it. It's an NHS funded course, and it probably should be an obligation to step in there if it has that funding attached to it. But I had no interest. I had no interest. I just knew I wanted to be in the sport environment, and I'd have taken any opportunity that came my way. I was applying for jobs everywhere, significantly less than the entry level salary in the NHS, but I just wanted to go in that environment and to learn. In terms of feeling ready, I had the added benefit of a good couple of years working 15 to 20 hours within the sporting environment, so I felt like I had a good level of confidence. But again, looking back, you don't know what you don't know, and there was a lot of cases where I missed a pector, like bleeding everywhere, bruising everywhere, and like looking back, it's so glaringly obvious what had happened. But it was my first week in to a new job. I don't even think I covered the game. It was the first training session after a game, and I was like, "Oh, that looks bad, but I'm not really sure what it is." And he had full power, but he was obviously at the time compensating from other areas, and I just didn't know what to look for. If there was a more comprehensive course, potentially, but again, how do you cover everything? I'd be interested. Would it be at a higher level? Would it be you do your physio and then you do an MSc in MSK physiotherapy? Probably. But then again, it elongates the length of education and things like that, doesn't it?
I think that when I look back and consider that there was a 3-hour module on exercise rehab in total,
3 by 10.
Yeah, you start to then at least feel like there's a shake-up that should happen. I mean, maybe it's already happened. I mean, this is my course 15 years ago, right? So there's a good chance that it's already a lot better than that. But
if you were to guess, do you think it would be?
I'm trying to be kind, but that's I think that's where I do see the logic. If that's all they can fit in because of all the other things they have to do, then it does make sense that there should be more than that, given the power of exercise as a tool for rehabilitation.
Or even a bolt-on module. And that's why I believe failing to get onto a physiotherapy degree is my biggest, one of the biggest factors in my success, because I understand sports science and strength and conditioning.
I'd say that these days I'm leaning on it more than I even used to. I'm looking more at my sports science knowledge and history than my first 5 years, perhaps, maybe even longer. I was a friend of mine, Andrew Goodchild. We've been speaking a lot about this recently, that sports science is fast becoming our most important degree. It's really, I mean, obviously the physio bit is the registration that you need, but the actual things that we use day to day, it's more sports science than physio.
Once you rule out red flags, it's training under a constraint, isn't it? and obviously you have to respect the pathology, but beyond that, it is just exercise.
Yeah, understand the principles.
Yeah.
So you got yourself into an MSK environment. Tell us about your journey from there.
So I was very lucky. Again, do you create your own luck? Who knows? But the work experience I was getting was at Huddersfield Giants, a rugby league team, and the head physio was Dave O'Sullivan. A lot of people, I presume, will know who he is. And upon so I got to spend a lot of time with him in the sport environment. But then he also had a private practice, and upon qualification, he offered me a job, and it was, let's say, 50-50. It was a full-time job with him, but he also had the contract at Halifax Rugby League, who were in the Championship. So I went and worked 20 to 25 hours in the clinic, but then I was their head physio. That's when I missed the pector, and the looking back now, like the title of head physio was maybe the wrong thing, but
I think you'll find a couple of those if you go far back on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, and it is what it is, isn't it? And
head physio because there's a team of one.
Exactly, there's a team of one, but he was a fantastic mentor to me, and not just clinically. I've learned a huge amount from him from a business perspective, but also just the way that he thinks. And one of the biggest things he always used to drill into me, I was the second employee, and Shane, who was the first, and then everyone that came subsequently after that, was that to always ask why. And it's to understand things in a deeper level, and try and identify root causes and understand stories and backgrounds more. And then also on the counter of that, to be able to justify what you're doing and what you're delivering. And I was very lucky in that regard. Like he has a mentorship, and I was sort of within the test dummies of the original mentorship, and got a huge amount of value for it. I've got a lot to thank him for from that. But very quickly, I didn't want to be in the private practice environment, treating that type of clientele, and the way that clinic was set up at the time was 30-minute appointments, and I felt like I just wanted a little bit longer with the person, and I wanted to go and experience full-time sport, and I applied for the head physio at Yorkshire Carnegie. Used to be Leeds Tykes, a professional full-time rugby union team. They had two jobs available, a head physio and a first-team physio, and I was successful and got the head physio job. Again, maybe a little bit immature in my career to get it, but it was a steep learning curve, and one that actually went pretty well. And over 18 months, we really established the medical department. There was a head of medical who was part-time, a fantastic doctor, and then there was me and two other physios, and we would cover the first team and the academy. Resources were limited. Yeah. We were a sister club to Leeds Rhinos, who were a massive rugby league team. We shared the training facilities, shared the stadium, but obviously they were the big brother, and we were the little brother, and we were as that. And then the head physio job came up at Leeds Rhinos, and put my name forward for it, and I was successful in getting it, and I was in and around the environment every day, and obviously for some reason I'd showcased what I could deliver, and I was successful in getting that. And 3 to 4 years in that role, I really enjoyed it. Had to navigate COVID, and that was an interesting experience. We won the Challenge Cup at an empty Wembley, so there was 50 people in Wembley when we won that, which was a shame, but a unique experience. And we went through COVID and went back, and I remember it really distinctly. I was at home with my wife, and I got a phone call. It was about 9:15 on a night, and one of the players is 6'5", 115 kilos, a massive ball of muscle, and he said, "I see you all right, and I've got a headache. Can I take paracetamol?" And I understand why he called me,
because they're terrified of the
drug testing and everything like that. But I was like, "Is this going to be my life forever? And am I always on?" And you are, like, at the end of the day, it's a full-time job, but your role is to do whatever the athlete needs to show up on the pitch, and then whatever the club needs to optimize their performance and success. And I loved it. It was a high-performance environment, and I lived and breathed it for a number of years. But I started to think about what else was an option, and at the time I was just, basically because people asked me, I hadn't ever advertised, seeing a couple of clients at a local hotel to us that we had a link with, and they had some decent facilities. And one of my friends, I think I was complaining about maybe being late back from a game or something like that, and he just went, how many clients would you have to see a week for you to match your salary? And it was 14.5. And I was like, the penny dropped, and I was like, I could do 15 hours a week of client-facing work, maybe an extra 5 admin and an extra 5 marketing, and I'm matching my salary in 25 hours that I dictate and choose, versus being told where to be, when to be there, what to wear. And it was just like, I couldn't go back from it. Yeah. And one of the things of being a physio is obviously you get to the end of the season, particularly in rugby, but I imagine in all sports, you're managing athletes until the end of the season with different niggles, injuries and things like that. And then they have the surgery, and it's like, right, it's the off season, it's my downtime. But actually, as a physio, they have the surgery, and then you need to get them back as quickly as possible to optimise their pre-season or be ready for the start of the season, or be ready for the start of the season. So you're expected to be in over the off season. And we were a really small team. Rugby league doesn't have a huge amount of funds. There was 2 of us, me and an assistant who was great as well. And we would be in year round, and it just, there was a moment and over the off season, and one of the coaching staff came down, and I was just chatting. He was like, "What do you do this for?" It was me and the assistant there, and we were like, "Oh, like, we love being physio, and we love being with the lads." And he just went, "There's lads everywhere." And I was like, I just couldn't get it out of my head after that. Like, he's right, and my reasons for being there, I felt like I was really well established. I'd seen so many injuries. Rugby league is a car crash of a sport. Quite literally, the G-force is equivalent of a 30 miles per hour car accident. And I was just ready for something different, and I made the leap, really.
I think there's so many good and bad things to cover in regards to sports physio here, which it really echoes and runs parallel to your story and my story. Actually, I think it's probably worth just going a bit deeper on it. So I didn't spend as long in full-time sport as you, but I did think I was going to be a sports physio. That was my aim. I really thought I was earning my stripes in the MSK world in order to get some kind of full-time sports role, and I'd be aiming for a Premier League job, aiming for a Premiership rugby job. That was in my mind. And I got the opportunity, and I started off in an academy setting about 3 years into my career. Maybe it was 4 years, and I just didn't get on with it in the end for me. A whole year of working with a team it was mainly at a school, so it wasn't even really the academy. It was like the just below the academy level. And I was on my own a lot as a physio. I was traveling on buses a lot. I was watching training a lot. I was in the gym a lot. I was treating the odd muscle strain, quite a lot of concussion. I was treating a lot. I guess, look, in sports, that's the thing with rugby in general. You do see a lot of variation in injuries, so you get quite good at taping, you get quite good at treating muscles. But there's a lot of bruises. There's a lot of headaches. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really challenge you clinically. It's just a case of being there to support it. And I think I got a bit bored. And there was also a role I went for a role and didn't get it. And then I reflected on it. Thought, I'm getting paid £12,500 for this supposedly part-time job that was closer to full-time than part-time. I'm traveling 2 hours a day round trip in order to be there. And one of the reasons they gave me, and I also then needed to work 4 other part-time jobs in order to prop up my lifestyle, my income. We had a mortgage at the time. It's like £12,500 a year isn't going to cut it.
It's not going far, is it?
So one of the reasons I didn't get the job was because I wasn't spending enough time at the actual academy to then learn. It's like, and I just thought, how am I going to do that? Like, I would have to then cut off one of my other jobs, take another pay cut in order to do that, to then get, I think the pay rise was something like, would go up to about 17.5 maybe. Yeah. I just thought, how long is it going to be until I can genuinely look at my salary and not be worried every month that I can pay the petrol to get to work? So there was this real moment of it was probably that first prompted me to think. And then I just started to realise that clinically it isn't that interesting to me. I was doing all this other clinical work, and often I'd get more joy out of helping Barbara in accounts to solve her 5-year neck pain by giving her a few different things to think about and getting her to think differently about a problem. That suddenly became a bit more interesting to me. I had to work a little harder for that. I had to think differently. I had to convince her to change her behaviour. So there was this shift in my mindset about what really interested me. I still loved match day. I still loved being around the lads.
The buzz, yeah.
I still loved it. And I was lucky enough to have been working with the FA at that point. So I decided that I'd leave the part-time / full-time role, go into clinical practice full-time in London, and keep my FA role, which was some weekends and then occasional longer trips away. So I got all the good stuff with sport, and then all the good stuff from clinical practice. And I never really looked back from that point. And there was probably 8 years of doing that, and working probably 6 days a week on average as a result of balancing the two roles, but really, really enjoying it and getting so much from both. And this isn't necessarily to tell people don't work in sport. Yeah. It's to say, like, actually look at what interests you. Like, what do you really want to be doing? And the two of us have done a bit of both and realised that actually the thing we were looking for isn't quite what we thought it was. Yeah. But wow, did it help me learn fast.
That's the one thing I would say. Like, working in rugby league, I because I don't have the experience of football, I can't comment, but it accelerated my learning just from pure exposure so quickly. I've seen so much more than especially what I would have done if I'd have gone down the NHS route, and certainly from a trauma perspective, what I would have seen in private practice. But I think as well, like, it's almost viewed as a privilege to work in sport, and wrongly, in my opinion, salaries do reflect that. I know at the time when I was working as the head physio at Leeds Rhinos, through a few different conversations, I realised I was one of the worst paid in the league from a salary perspective as a head physio. And then when I broached it with them, they actually said to me, it's a privilege to work at Leeds Rhinos. We've got these facilities. We're not a club that's going to go into administration as many do in rugby league. And it just when a few things all line into place, and as much as anything, I just wanted to have control of my time, and that was the other thing. You couldn't take annual leave in the season. You were buzzing if you got given the weekend off. We would typically play a Friday night. Saturday would be recovery. If the lads played well, it'd be like, right, weekend off, lads. But then you're a physio, and if there's an injury, you need to assess them the next morning and treatment plan. So it was, I just wanted to have a bit more control, and I went down I got offered a role through the RFL, so the Rugby Football League, and that was within the England pathway. So everything from the men's team, women's team, academy, all the way down. And I did that part-time. Again, travelled camps, France, different places. I loved it. But then the clinic started taking off, and I had to give, and the one that I was really becoming passionate about, both from a clinical perspective, but also a business side of things, and from an entrepreneurship side of things, was the clinic. And it was really fulfilling from both of those angles. And then online just started to take off, and was amplified when lockdown hit, really, and I've not looked back since. And I genuinely don't see a job in sport that I would go back for now. Not even from a financial perspective, but a lifestyle perspective and enjoyment. I couldn't imagine being told when I had to be somewhere and what I had to wear and that side of it. And that's not the truth for all sporting jobs. I've got friends at Saracens. They've got a team that's big enough that they can take annual leave in season, and they've got it right. But we were with two physios managing 38 people.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. And the nature of the sport, we could have 20 people actively injured at any point, and you've got to treat, rehab, plan, and then it's going to the consultations to see specialists, and it was crazy. But I loved it. Like I say, it massively accelerated my learning, But I just couldn't see going back now.
Tell the listeners where you are now. Just give us an idea of what your current environment looks like, what your business is.
Yeah, so leaving sport, I went and got a corner room in my friend's gym. It's a functional fitness CrossFit style gym in a industrial estate, and it was just an MDF room that he'd put in the corner, and he was one of my best mates, and it was perfect for me at the time. Too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter, but it meant that I could see people. There was a group of 175 members who would know who I was already because I would train there, and naturally just things started to build momentum there. If I was treating during class time, it was too ridiculously loud with barbells being dropped and bits and pieces like that. But equally, if it was outside of that, I could go in and use the gym and have ample space to rehab people and train them how I would want to do it. But quickly it was, right, what's the next step? And there was two sort of turning points. One was finding the new facility, which is sort of a private industrial site to a really high quality and a really nice setting. And I went into a 600 square foot unit, and basically as a sole practitioner in one room would have power rack, dumbbells, barbell, full gym setup really, a watt bike, treadmill, and then also within that room, treatment bed, desk, and things like that. But the thing that what really sort of, from a business perspective, amplified what I was doing was I looked at my friend who owned the gym, and he went on holiday, no stress. But I would go on holiday and I'd miss a week's worth of revenue, and I'm either shoving everyone the week before or the week after to make sure that I don't experience that, which isn't why I was doing it. I wanted to have a balance from a lifestyle perspective. But he was going away and chilling, and I was like, well, he's got a recurring revenue from his membership basis, and he's maybe got 7-8 PTs who are also on a recurring package, and they understand he goes on holiday, and he understands they go on holiday. And I also felt like I could deliver physio in a better way, the same way that I would do it in professional sport. And because of my background with sports science, strength and conditioning, I would do everything for the injured athlete, whereas sort of traditional physio in the sport environment would be more, I'll do the rehab, but you guys take care of the upper body and the conditioning. I just took care of everything. I love that. I love programming in detail and planning and things like that. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do that for my clients. And I was already doing some online consultations, seeing people in person, and I just offered people a more comprehensive package where I did everything for them, whether they came to see me once a week, once a month, or it was just online, and things just took off. From there, I moved into the new facility, and within 9 to 12 months, I had, at its peak, close to 80 one-to-one clients on our pro recovery plan. That's the comprehensive package that we offered, and that was a mix of, well, primarily online, but some people that came in person, and then I was doing 2 clinic days as well. And I wasn't doing 20 hours a week anymore, but like I was seeing money that I couldn't even believe. I had huge limiting beliefs, and this was at a time when I'd sort of signed up with my first mentor, and it did absolute wonders for me in terms of removing limiting beliefs and creating a vision beyond what I ever thought was possible from a clinic perspective, but then also my personal life. I thought I could get to a clinic like we have now, but in 15, 20 years and doing it the traditional model. But now we've got, well, there's 4 physios, 2 coaches. We've got a clinic with 3 treatment rooms. We're going to actually, part of the next expansion is go to 4 treatment rooms with a specific rehab gym. We have a small group personal training gym at the moment with a membership base of 80 people in a 700 square foot space. We're now going into a 1,500 to 1,600 square foot for space, so we can double our membership base. The original gym becomes our rehab gym, and our service just gets sort of astronomically better by just enabling the amount of space. Our current sort of rehab space, it looks really nice. It's in the loft, it's got beams and things like that, but you can't progressively hop because you'll hit your head on the beam. And just the practicality of it is going to open up with last year we opened a Pilates studio, again, very in keeping with our values in terms of small group, one-to-one care. Is maximum of 6 people. We could have put 10 beds in there, but we wanted to make it a premium service where people get huge amounts of value from it. And then we're going to open up another studio and integrate different recovery modalities. We've got sauna, cold plunge, and we'll get to a point this year by sort of June, July, where there's not much physical expansion that can happen other than looking at lifestyle, third space type things where we work and coffee and things like that. But they're the icing on the cake. But in terms of actually having an impact, improving people's health and wellness, whatever that looks like, we've got everything in place to do that. An ecosystem that has a varied offering, and we can just help people live their best life, really.
What do you think's connected with your client base so powerfully? Because clearly things have taken off because you've got something that people want, right? That's the whole premise of business. If you have something people want, they're willing to pay for it. So what do you think that you've done that has connected with the people in the surrounding area?
Yeah, everything's centered around product. Everything that we do is product first, and that might be our clinical skills and the results that we get, but it's everything that leads the person from first finding out who we are. And there's a book called The Effortless Experience. It's fantastic. And I went into the detail of how, if someone finds out who I am, how easy is it for them to book in with me? How easy is it for them to find me? How well educated and prepared, and what are their expectations of what happens when they come in? And I obviously, and this was when, before we'd added the gym and the Pilates and things like that, it was, being in pain is a stressful experience, enough of a stressful experience in and of its own. But then added on top of that of, where do I park? How do I find them? Where do I go in? What they're going to look like? What they're going to sound like? And we've been very intentional in everything that we've done in the back end, in terms of automations and confirmations and things like that. But it also, in terms of how we project ourselves outwardly in our marketing and social media, is we want to remove as many of those barriers as possible so that people feel like they know us and like us and trust us before they even walk in.
No, like trust.
Exactly. And if we can optimize that as much as possible, we're already winning, because they're coming believing that we can help them. Mm-hmm. Because if we position ourselves as experts and provide value on social media, through email, through different events, whatever marketing material that we choose, they're going to come with an expectation that we're the person that's going to help them. We, of course, have to back that up in terms of our clinical skills, and we have a heavy CPD schedule, both from an onboarding perspective for new staff, but then on an ongoing basis within the clinic. And ultimately, the other real big thing that we focus on is communication. We want people to be as crystal clear on everything that is going to happen when they turn up, and that's the first thing we say, just to let you know, you may have been to physio before, but I want you to be crystal clear on what's happening in the next hour. During it, we're writing it down so they've got visual representation of what's happening within the session, as well as that verbal feedback. And then the follow-up is also lots of information to make sure they have complete clarity on the process. And because essentially the calmer they are, the more they buy into the process, the more they understand it. Again, it weighs it in our favour that they're going to experience a positive outcome. And we just try and layer that through the entire system. We want them to leave that first session understanding that we're not a quick fix clinic. We are going to test you. We're going to push you. It's going to be hard. The reason it's hard is this. And I joke about it with clients, and I'll say, I don't want to see you when you finish. I never want to see you again, because if I have done my job properly, you won't come back, or you'll have as little chance of coming back with that problem as possible. It's terrible for my business, because I'd love you to keep coming every single week.
But it isn't really, is it? Because it's the word of mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the way that people view.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's the way that the modern physio should be thinking, is that do your absolute best to fix that person, to help them fix themselves, whichever you want to use, but so they don't need to come back to see you again. Because then they will tell everyone. they will say, oh, I couldn't believe it. I didn't need to see this. I saw him 4 or 5 times. I saw him 8, 9 times, and I feel better than ever. Whatever the number is, but you get to a conclusion where they, provided they don't get injured again in somewhere else, which often happens, they come back in and it's like, oh, is it that injury? No, it's a new injury. Okay, no problem. I can help.
But there is also the education of, like, this can happen again. There is an element of luck to injury.
But it's the mindset.
It is, yeah. 100%.
It's the mindset of, I don't want to see you again. I think that's a really powerful thing to be able to say to someone, I don't want to have to see you again. And then as long as you are then, you stick to your word and get the outcome that you promise. And
that's why testing is so important.
Then it's great. It's great. And all those other things, by the way, you were talking about, I mean, is that not the most powerful and an ethical placebo effect that we can provide?
100%.
Right? All those things where you're communicating the way you are, setting expectations, all your online content, your website, everything is setting an expectation for effect. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a really underestimated part of what we should be doing as businesses, as clinicians, as however you want to think of it in this world. What else could be influencing that person's recovery beyond your actual clinical encounter with the person?
Absolutely. I talk about building authority quite a lot to my team, and you'll go to a doctor or a specialist and they'll tell you to do something and you'll do it because they are the pinnacle of medical authority. But you go see a physio and it's kind of like, well, it's just a physio, rightly or wrongly. But again, how you carry yourself, how you communicate, the messaging that you have, what the clinic looks like, even just the smell when you walk in, the colours that are around you. I'm quite intentional of, or try to be as intentional as possible about what someone's whole experience is, rather than I'm just a really good physio, because it does matter. And again, like, even our front house, she doesn't help fix problems, but she's such a genuinely nice person that people mention her in reviews, they remember her, and it's all part of the experience.
And as a result, she does help fix problems.
Exactly, yeah. And she improves rebook rate, she improves referrals by just genuinely communicating and having conversation and taking interest in the person. And like, she's fantastic, and I wouldn't change her.
You mentioned testing as well. I want to make sure we come back to that.
Yeah.
Because no doubt heavily influenced by your time working in sport, your sports science background. And, you know, I see it as a really important part of what I do as well. What's the typical testing process that you'll go through with a client?
We typically go through 6 phases. And we will make sure that we are explaining the rationale and the reasoning as we go through those phases, and whether we start with mobility, range of motion, biomechanics as that sort of initial phase, and then we look at capacity metrics, absolute strength, then we go power or plyometric ability, peak power, absolute power, whatever those metrics are on that continuum. We use it for a number of different reasons. Buy-in is a big one, to show people this is where you are versus our North Star of a happy, healthy, high-performing person.
Yeah, I think it's a real powerful behaviour change motivator.
Massively, yeah.
For someone to be able to see it in objective form, it's different to me saying it. I often know roughly what it's going to say. I can make a prediction just by listening to what they do in their life and understanding what their injury might be. I kind of roughly know what I would give them. Mm-hmm. It helps me to know whether my intervention has worked on the other side of it, to have a baseline, but it's more for the person. It's certainly nowadays, it used to be for me. Now I've done it enough times. It's more for the person.
It is, yeah. To buy into to what you're doing, and to understand it's not a quick fix. I could massage you and you'll feel better, but you'll go back and run a 5K with a 30% deficit in your car capacity, and I'll see you again in 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is. Why don't we just solve it right once this time?
Yeah, I see it as helping us both be held accountable to the process.
Yeah.
So if I set a number, if we set a number in that session based on an objective test and it hasn't changed on the other side of it, either they've not done what I asked them to do or what they agreed to do, or I haven't done my job well enough. Yeah. I haven't given them the right plan. Yeah. And there's been plenty of times where that's been the case, but the numbers have meant I've had to shift it, change it. There was a time recently where a a guy had 3 or 4 different problems we were working on, which always complicates things. None of them hugely significant, but they were all needed a bit of work. And we'd agreed at one point that he should be doing his shoulder exercises once a week to enable him to do everything else. So 3 months later, we tested shoulder stuff, and it probably improved by about 4%.
Yeah.
And I then said to him, look, that was my call. We decided to do your shoulder stuff once a week. It hasn't been enough. And I knew he'd been doing it because he would show me all his data. He'd show me all the things he was committing to. So we had to change it. We then increased it twice a week. We measured it again, and it went up by 20%. Yeah. So for him, the once a week wasn't enough, and we had to change it. So it held me accountable. I then held my hands up and said, yep, that's me. We were doing other things. I mean, he didn't mind. He was fine about it. He's like, no, I get it.
That's really important, isn't it? The honesty side of it. And I'll say that to people. I'll say, I want to see you in a week because I want to know, one, if there's been any problems, and then we can sort that problem. But then two, I want to progress you as quickly as possible. Yeah. I think being open about it is the way you have to be.
I call that riding the wave, right? Yeah. You know the honeymoon period you get at the start where they just look at a weight and they're getting stronger. Yeah. That's going to be the first 6 to 8 weeks where it's just so easy, the honeymoon period. So I like to see people quite frequently in that early stage because they're going to be ready for the next set of exercises after the first week, the second week, the third week. Around a month, they might start to not need me so much to nudge things along, or I've taught them how to do it themselves. But yeah, I really believe that frequency is important. And like you just said, that kind of, I want to see you in a week because things are probably going to have changed and you'll be ready for the next step. Or you're doing something not quite right and we can catch it quickly.
And like I said, that communication is so important. And explaining, I need to see you in a week. It's not because I want the money in this calendar month. It's actually because I have the opportunity, one, to fix a problem if it's gone wrong, or progress you quickly towards your goals. And like our first 2 to 4 appointments, we'll be focusing more on range of motion, control, capacity, those types of metrics. But the minute we get to strength, plyometrics, we're going, right, we want to see you in 2, 3, 4 weeks' time because that's how long it takes to make a significant adaptation. You can come in more frequently if you want to, but we don't need to.
Yeah.
And again, they appreciate that honesty. And our pro recovery plan, which is our more comprehensive plan that I mentioned earlier, we see what people are doing all the time. So we use TrueCoach, a coaching app, and it means that rather than every 2, 3, 4 weeks we see them, I can see on a day-to-day basis what you're doing, provide feedback, and that's been one of the most powerful things that I've implemented into our business is that plan. The results people get and the speed that they get them and how almost easy it can be at times has been really powerful. But by having full control and awareness and the ability to answer questions quickly and solve problems quickly, which again the traditional model just doesn't offer, does it? Oh, it's one of the limitations of it anyway.
Yeah, and one of the things that I find really important around that stage is helping people understand, because I jested earlier that they can look at a weight and get stronger in the honeymoon period, but it isn't as easy as that in that middle phase where they really need to build strength. They're making, it's not just neuromuscular change. They're not just learning how to use their muscles. They're actually having to develop new muscle tissue. They're having to develop tougher connective tissue, whatever it might be. In that phase, they've got to work quite hard, and that's often something I've found that people don't know how to work hard in the gym.
Most physios don't make rehab hard enough.
Yeah, the face test, right?
Exactly.
Does it look like that person is actually working hard, or are they just cruising through each rep?
Is that? I was thinking about this earlier, and I was coming here, and is that a lack of education, potentially on the physio's perspective, or is it a lack of confidence? And that's the other beauty of the testing, is you've earned the right to push yourself now. You've got a base level of robustness, and you've got a base level of work that I'm aware of that you can tolerate. This needs to be hard now, and it needs to reflect what the end goal looks like. And one of the key sessions that I used to deliver from a sports perspective was a worst case scenario session. Obviously we have all the data, the metrics from the GPS of running speeds, running distances, accel, decels and things like that. And we would do a 20 to 40 minute bout of exercise or a session that's that long that is at 110% of that. So then I can go, and this is for longer term injuries and things like that, but I can go with as much confidence. You've hit all of your metrics from a testing perspective. You've completed and tolerated loading at 110% of what you did do previously, the data tells me you're ready to go, and subjectively, how do you feel? But I think the other side of testing and that type of session is it does a hell of a lot for the client's psychology, for them to visually see, I've gone from 10 kilos to 15 kilos in strength of whatever test it is. Well, I don't just feel stronger, I am objectively stronger.
Yeah.
And again, the resilience that's attached to that and the mindset that's attached to that is really powerful.
There aren't many things in our world where the data is pretty clear around injury risk prevention, right? The strength and capacity side is pretty conclusive. And although it isn't necessarily a universal fix for everything, and I'm very aware of that, it's a pretty good place to start for most people. So if you create this process as you have that sort of runs through the way you do things, then worst case scenario, you're protecting against future things, even if you don't get to the bottom of the main thing in the moment. So that's why I've always found it a really obvious thing to work on, that even if we don't solve the actual pain, they're a lot stronger and we've prevented something in the future. And then you've ruled out one thing and you work again and then you go again. So I think it's a really important skill for people to understand and get right. You mentioned earlier that you were wondering whether it was training, about whether people were struggling with rehab and getting the right intensity, or whether it was confidence. I'd add another one. I'd also say experience of it themselves. So do people
what hard
train?
is.
Yeah. Have you gone through a process where you've trained really hard and seen the result of that?
Yeah.
Or do you go to the gym once a week and kind of tick along at the same weights yourself? Mm-hmm. And once you've trained hard yourself and seen the benefit, and sometimes actually the cost, you then get better, right? Going back to our original quote, do you want to learn through the experience of yourself, or do you want to learn through the experience of others? That's one where actually I think you need to experience it yourself as well as thinking about others, because you've got to be able to feel it and know what happens in your body to be able to then confidently give that out to other people.
100%, yeah. You have to walk the walk to a certain degree. I think just touching on what you said about the strength training, I look at rehab through two lenses, a science and an art. And you've got the art, which is your softer skills, your subjective data and conversation and things like that. And that's, for me, is like sometimes solving the pain side of things, but the science is getting fitter and stronger. And how many people do you hear of that go, I just wasn't the same when I went back. I was pain-free, but I just wasn't the same. And that's the other big thing about having an approach which is performance-driven or testing-driven, because improving performance is via testing. It means that you actually go back at a level that you want to compete at, whatever level of sport that you enjoy, but you go back at a level where you're going to enjoy competing and performing. Yes, you might have to grade your exposure back into the sport, the game, whatever it is, but you're doing it at a level that you're happy with and you're confident with, ideally better than you were before, because your body let you down when you were...
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
If you get your rehab right, I think you do that. You solve a lot of problems that hadn't been picked up before. I say all the time to my clients that injury is an opportunity to solve problems that you didn't realise you had. So
go back quicker, stronger, more mobile, more resilient.
Yeah.
Less likely to see me again.
Yeah. And I think the physio that we're describing here, the model of physio, and allow me to call it physio coaching, as is the podcast title, it bridges the gap between traditional physio methods and performance. And whether that performance is going for a 5K run at a weekend, or whether it is performing at the highest level in rugby league, it still needs a different style than the 3 sets of 10 3-hour module that I was taught in my university degree. So
just touching on that's one thing I battle with quite a lot, is updating people's beliefs around what performance is, because people only associate performance with high performing people, when actually the person that is just running a park run on a weekend, and I say just, it's still 5K. Like,
many people can't run 5K.
Exactly. And you need a minimum level of performance to do that. But the amount of people that come into our clinic who are quote unquote everyday people, mums, dads, grandmas, granddads, that do things recreationally, love playing with the kids, running around, changing direction, picking them up off the floor, you need a base level of performance to do that and enjoy it and continue doing that. and avoid injury and fix the problem. And it's something we actively work on in terms of our communication to clients, but also, again, how we portray ourselves externally. But it's hard, isn't it? Like, from a marketing perspective, you can't talk to everyone. And the amount of people who, even this week, I got an email from a lady, and she's 60. I know I'm not your ideal client. Like, you're in pain. I can help you.
Yeah. So one of my long-term clients, Jim, he's been coming to see me post foot surgery. So before his surgery, he was, you'd probably call it disabled. You could walk, but significant limp, didn't have much capacity, was in pain every day. His surgery was always a risk because he was old, he didn't have the greatest of bone health. He actually had a complication in the procedure itself. But he still kind of came out of surgery reasonably well. But he was so deconditioned because of this 10 to 15 year history of foot and ankle pain that his journey has been really, really slow. So his performance at the moment is not quite where he wants to be. He wants to be able to spend the day on his feet, walking around, shopping with his wife, and not feel limited by that.
That's performance for him.
That's performance for him. So at the moment, I checked in on it the other day, and I said, Jim, what's your walking tolerance like at the moment? What are you able to do? He said, I couldn't, maybe. He was struggling with it. He wasn't sure how to answer it. I said, well, can you walk 10 minutes? He's like, yeah, I can walk 10 minutes. Can you walk 20 minutes? And he's rattling around his brain. Yeah, I suppose in the morning, I walk up to the shop to get the paper, and I walk back again. That round trip's about 20 minutes. Okay, so you currently have a 20-minute walking capacity. Is that enough for you, Jim? No, I want to be able to do a lot more. Well, how are we going to get more? And he said, oh, well, I've got my exercise, I've got this, I've got that. But Jim, you need to be walking more than 20 minutes. You need to push out beyond that, go outside of your comfort zone, create a new comfort zone. You need to just nudge a little bit more. I had to explain graded exposure to him, right? Yeah. And for him, that was mind-blowing. It's like, but I could do 20 minutes. I was just waiting. And for him, it was just a case of time. Yeah. He's not in that phase of post-op anymore. Yeah. He has to work for those gains. And sometimes we have to remember that not everyone understands performance that way. We have to be able to communicate it in a way that makes sense to him. So I just said to him, how about on the way back, you walk the long way, find a different way home. Yeah. And then once that gets comfortable, then go the long way there and back. And then you might find a park, and for him that then, I get it. I just had to get some kind of story to him that encapsulated graded exposure. That wasn't me saying, Jim, you needed to gradually expose yourself to more and more, because that's too
100%
abstract.
And again, our comprehensive offering and the physio coach side of things, for the right person, there's always a way to develop physical qualities. And it might be the person that wants to go back and run 10K, but they've had a Achilles rupture, right? We're doing seated skier, develop aerobic capacity. So we can still develop these underpinning qualities so that, one, we at least maintain the level we're at, but ideally we can still see improvements in VO2 max, aerobic capacity, whatever it is. Train the other side. We don't need to go into the complexity of it, but there's always something. And like you say, an injury is an opportunity. Like, that's one of mine and our biggest taglines that we use: that every injury is an opportunity.
I just didn't know that. I set that one up well for you. Yeah. Another thing about Jim is that he's been going to the gym 3 times a week for good 10, 20 years. But he didn't understand progressive overload.
Same weights inside.
Yeah. So for him,
so common, isn't it?
It's a complete. He cannot understand that. He comes in and I gave him a 12 kilo dumbbell kettlebell to deadlift. 2 months later, he's got a 20 kilo. He can't understand. He's like, I cannot believe I'm lifting this 20 kilos. Like, how?
It's a nice feeling. That's the fulfilling feeling. Yeah. Those mic drop moments, the light bulb moments, they're really special.
Jim's 75, right? And he's now cannot believe that his body could do this. Yeah. In his head, he's an old man, and he's 12 kilos is his limit. So you just, that's the power of what we do, is that we help people see that there is more to achieve than they believe.
Another really key thing we talk about as a group of practitioners at Move is expanding someone's vision, and especially beyond being pain-free.
You said it earlier as a business owner.
Yeah.
realise your limits.
Yeah, exactly. And these things, like these values, fall into place in all different ways, don't they? And people come and, okay, what's your goals? Like, tell me what's the ideal end point of this. I just want to be pain free, right? Okay, you, like every other person that's come and sat in that seat for the last 3 years, has said the same thing. But can you tell me what being pain free allows you to do? Because then we understand the person and the goals far more specifically, and it allows us to tailor the rehab and individualize the rehab far more, and explain to them, right, your rehab doesn't end at pain-free. Your rehab ends when you hit these metrics and we go through this graded exposure plan, and then I can shake your hand and really confidently go, good luck, well done. If there's a problem, let me know, but you've ticked everything off.
I often encourage the client in those first 2 sessions probably to aim higher. Oh, I just want to be pain-free. No, aim higher. Yeah. Have you heard of the moonshot concept, where in the 60s when they realised they wanted to try and send a man to the moon, and along the way they did do it in the end, but it was this long shot concept. They never really knew if they could do it or not. But along the way they developed so much technology and infrastructure and knowledge that propelled the economy of the world to some degree, but certainly the United States and Russia to such a degree that the benefits were massive. Even if they didn't get a man to the moon, it was worth it for all of the other technological advancement and all the other advancements they made. So that's what I remind people of.
100%.
You might aim high, but if you miss, you're still a lot higher off than if you'd have aimed low and achieved.
Yeah.
100%. So I think it's a really
There's a lot to be said, yeah. A lot to be said for that.
So we started off the conversation today talking about learning from others' experiences. You're now at a stage in your career where you don't do as much physio anymore. You're more thinking of running your business. And I can see a future where I would do that too now as well. I love what I do, but I also know that the impact I can have by creating a business and a team that help people in a different way, and I help them help those people. There's also another quote that I'm going to bring up from the book that I was reading this morning, that when you are sweeping dust away, that dust is gone and it's a nice clean environment. But that dust comes back, so you have to keep sweeping.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same in my idea of better never ends, right? You have to keep working on things. If you stop sweeping, the dust comes back. If you stop learning, you get stale, you get left behind. How do you do that now at this stage in your career? You've moved away a little bit from clinical practice. I know you keep a bit, but on the whole you have. What's your way of sweeping the dust away?
Just consistently showing up on a day-to-day basis and trying to iterate on what has already worked. I'm quite reflective in nature, albeit I don't communicate particularly well. My wife will definitely definitely agree with that. Going through the process that I have done has expanded my vision and almost created, perhaps naively, this limitless belief of what's possible. And one of the best exercises that I ever did from a business perspective was a vision exercise where if money wasn't an issue, what does the business look like? And a lot of it was modelled off like the American model, where they've got these big industrial buildings and they've got indoor pitches, outdoor pitches, on-site chefs, like an Exos type situation. But then there was really like wild things like, I'd love to have a private jet so I could take a group of clients on a retreat. And for me, it just started to tell me things of things I would like to do with the business. Yes, the likelihood of me having a private jet in the business is very minimal, but do I want to take people away for a retreat? And is that an experience that I'd like to create for myself and for them and to help people optimize the health, well-being and fitness? And that's now a really powerful exercise. I've dipped my toe into mentorship and business mentorship and things like that. And a really powerful exercise I've done with the people that I'm working with in that capacity. But I guess on a day-to-day basis, it's just showing up and working with intent and having goals and chasing them really, and having ambitious goals. Because like you said there, the moonshot theory, I'll shoot there, but any progress is progress. And even if it's slow progress, it's still progress. And I've kind of become a little bit fearless of if it all goes wrong, because what what is the worst that could happen? Like, yeah, I'm responsible for people's salaries and things like that, and I fully respect that. But the worst thing that could happen is I have to go and work in a clinic, work in the NHS, potentially move back into sport. I'll work for Amazon if I had to, delivering parcels all day to make ends meet. I'm not really fearful of that, and I want to explore what's possible, really.
Adrian DaCosta said something very similar.
Did he?
Yeah, he's set up the running room, and that was what he would do is he would reverse engineer these things and
Absolutely.
say, keep going back. What's the worst? What's the worst? He says, the worst case scenario, I go back to Australia, I'm sitting on the beach, drinking a coffee and thinking of my next plan.
I'm really lucky that like my mum and dad I've had a fantastic upbringing, and if it all went wrong to that extent, me, my wife and my kids will move in there.
Yeah.
And they'd look after us and then start building again. And like, it's interesting you say about reverse engineering. Everything I do and we do from a rehab perspective is reverse engineered against someone's end goals. And like I say, the metrics and the North Stars that we have that someone performs like and looks like for that. But from a business perspective and that vision side of things, I do the same, whether it's a forecasted revenue target. Okay, so how do I get there? How many clients do we have to see at what cost, and how many packages do we sell and block bookings do we sell? And obviously that I look at it quite heavily from a business and entrepreneurial side of things now, but layered in that is the product, and the product has to be right first to allow us to achieve the results and fulfill those things. So I just love looking at it, reflecting on it, and going, right, what can we do better and why?
I started working with a business coach a few months back, and there was a point where I suddenly realised I was learning too slow from my experiences.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to that concept again. I was failing where I felt like I probably didn't need to fail if someone was just giving me some guidance, and I found it a really valuable experience. I know that you've done the same. And what kind of support have you had through your career from a learning and mentorship and coaching perspective?
So I've done 3 formal mentorships. I've probably today on business mentorship itself spent north of £60,000. I really do value paying for mentorship as well. Like we live in an age where information isn't lacking. I could go on YouTube and probably find out a large majority of the things that I've learned, but the value exchange of paying for it makes my psychology very different to it and holds me accountable to squeezing as much out of it as possible. But then also it's people that are multiple steps ahead of me in life and business that I have a huge amount of respect for first and foremost, and derive a hell of a lot of value from. And they've all helped in different ways and installed different beliefs into myself and installed different systems, infrastructure into the business that, again, I would pay what I've paid 5 times over. And then obviously the same from a clinical perspective. Again, that tens of thousands of pounds on clinical development. And I'm working with a business mentor at the moment, but then I've also through my experiences worked with a lot of really successful people who just in day-to-day conversation and coaching them and rehabbing them and becoming friends with them and going for a coffee. I just want to suck as much information up on a day-to-day basis as possible, and whether that's a conversation with a client, sitting here with yourself. Like, I'm quite intentional about even what my Instagram feed looks like, because I want the time. I don't want to spend huge amounts of time on there. I'm a bit of a prisoner to it because I have a decent personal brand and we use it heavily from a marketing perspective. But if I'm on there, I want to see things that benefit me, and I'm not there for entertainment. I get entertainment elsewhere.
Yeah, that's quite a powerful point. I do something similar. I don't use social media for my entertainment either anymore. It can sometimes slip. You kind of catch yourself. You're like, hang on a minute.
Especially when you're tired.
What does this mean? Hang on. Yeah, okay, right. I'm tired. I probably need to take some time away and get better sleep. But I've done the same. Is that I do learn from Instagram still. I'm still on there trying to learn from others. But I've curated that gradually over the years to to make sure that my feed does show me what I want it to show me, to be intentional about it rather than to be at the mercy of your, tired desires and wants. So
I even ask why in that regard. I'm like, so why am I seeing this on my feed? Is it benefiting me? And it might be a business person. It might be who I respect and can take something from. It might be a clinician, a practitioner who are talking about something from the physio world or the S&C world. But equally, it might be a creator. And it might be, well, how can I improve our marketing from them? And as long as I can take something from it and understand why, the purpose of me following them and seeing them on the feed, then there is value in it, rather than just the mindless scrolling and seeing politics on there.
Alex, what does better never ends mean to you? This was the tagline for our brand. Will continue to be the North Star for me personally. That's what my primary value would be. It's the thing that motivates me most of all. What does that mean to you?
I think from my perspective, it goes back to that vision piece and expanding my vision. I've far surpassed anything which I intended to do. Like I say, I left, well, I wanted to work in professional sport. I left sport to have a lifestyle business, and I'm far exceeding that now. And I'm slowly capturing some lifestyle elements back and controlling that. But it is squeezing as much out of life as possible, whether that's the success of the business, both from the impact that we have, the financial side of it, the life that allows and creates for me and my family. And I'm a father to 2 young girls now, and I want to be heavily involved and there and available. And I look at it a lot through that lens now, and I hold myself very accountable to being a good dad and a good husband, and everything then trickles down from there now, and that's the lens that I'm looking at better never ends through, and each step beyond from that is full of intent and reverse engineered of how can I optimize my ability to be a father and to be a husband, really.
And how does someone find out about you?
Easiest is social media, Instagram, Alex Morrell, Physio, Morrell, and drop me a message, and I love chatting. If I can provide value from business, clinical, whatever it is, I'll happily have a chat and a conversation.
Thanks very much.
My pleasure.
We'll carry on sweeping the dust away.
Absolutely.
And working towards our moonshot.
What do you do in terms of sweeping the dust? I'm interested.
So my sweep in the dust is I set myself a reading goal each year.
Okay.
So I increased it this year because I hit it last year. Mm-hmm. So last year I hit my 18 book target.
I'm a very poor reader.
So this year I'm aiming to hit 20.
Nice.
Audiobooks have really helped, actually. I've started to realise that I do listen to podcasts, but I've found that I'm almost using it as escapism more often than not. Rather than needing the escapism, it's become a bit of a habit to just listen to podcasts that isn't necessarily learning. So I realised that I could replace some of that with an audiobook. So although I prefer reading a book, I learn better with it because I'll write notes and I'll jot things down. There are some books where I don't sense I need to learn as much or take as many notes. Like, for example, those Ryan Holiday books that I referenced. Yeah. The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy. Those principles make sense to me already. It's just nice to hear someone who's really at the top of their game
package it well with a story.
Yeah, the story's good. He's a great writer. So they're like perfect audiobooks for me. So nice. I think that's really helped. The Business Coach, that's another one. I think that's really helped to fast track my business acumen, because there was a period for the first 2 or 3 years where I kind of knew, right, once I achieve that, I'll work on that. Once I achieve that, I'll work on that. And things went pretty well. Mm-hmm. But then, last year there was these things where I'd make a decision and it didn't work. So, okay, let's try something else. And then I'd make that decision, didn't work either, or it'd half work and not really work. And then there was this realization that that's because you don't understand business. Yeah. You didn't go to university and learn business. You've learned how to be a physio, and now you're just kind of learning messily and learning through failure, which is why it was a really powerful quote from that book.
Not learning through someone else's failures.
Now I'm learning through someone else, right? And it's been a much better experience of it's tough, you know. He holds me accountable, and I've got to show up, I've got to do the thing, and also be a physio at the moment. You know, our business still requires me very much to be a physio. So there's, as much as I'm very much enjoying the business side of it, to try and squeeze that stuff into the time I have, plus be a father, as you mentioned, plus be a husband, plus be a friend, plus try and push my exercise. I've still got exercise goals I want to hit. To do all those things is tricky. So hence the point about prioritizing. This stuff's all personal for me, right? This podcast becomes this diary of my personal experiences, my challenges in the moment. But I do want to keep sweeping. You know, I do want to keep sweeping one way or another, whether it is learning physio, whether it is learning business, whether it is learning how to run faster, lift heavier weights. To me, that's what Better Never Ends is. It's sweeping every day. I might be sweeping a different room, but it's sweeping every day.
Yeah.
So, and just to finish, there are times when I realise I need to take a break from sweeping.
Yeah.
And I'm recognising those a little quicker these days. Christmas, I had 2 weeks off.
Nice.
Barely did a thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think I did 2 hours of something because it had to be done there, but I didn't do anything. And guess what? Everything was okay.
Yeah. Didn't burn down.
Yeah. Everything was fine.
It's a big lesson, that, though.
Yeah. No problems were had. So, and I'm looking forward to a 2-week holiday this year. We didn't have one last year. We moved house, but look forward to a 2-week holiday.
Fantastic.
I also read Clockwork recently. Good book by Mike Mihalovic, who wrote Profit First, another really impactful book on my business. And the concept within it, my memory is that it happened by accident for him. He had to take a month off, so he had to get his business ready for this month off. And he realised that he'd worked so hard on these processes and so hard on getting everyone set up and geared up for it, that his business ran like clockwork while he was off for a month. Yeah. And then he realised that actually it was the fact that he was off for that month that meant that it had to be ready. So one of his messages is take a month off every year to make sure that the business runs like clockwork. And not just for him, but everyone. Certainly all the senior people within the team should take a month off so that the business still runs like clockwork without them. So that's what I'm working towards this year.
That's what having children forced me to do. Yeah, it's been great. So no, I love that.
Let's carry on sweeping.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Better, provider of health and wellness services in central London. We really believe that we can help people feel better and live better. You can book in for face-to-face services at any of our 3 London clinics. We have one in Marylebone, one in Soho, and one in the city. You can also follow us on Instagram at Better Never Ends, or head over to our website for more information about the clinics or the podcast at www.betterneverends.com.